Smith retired. You guys are close to the same area, same part of the metro.
We're farmers. He and I farm together. We share farm equipment.
That's right.
We're much better at that than we are at coaching.
Well, what are your thoughts on John and what he's meant to OSU in his career?
So I was thinking the other day, I don't know when they started on his statue, but it should have been a while back. I don't think we've ever had anybody at this university who's been the best they've done in the world for 7 years. He was the best in the world at what he did for 7 years. You know what I'm saying? I mean, that's a pretty amazing. Now, Barry Sanders was for 1 year. I agree with that. But John was the best at what he did in the world for 6 or 7 years. 2 Olympic golds, obviously. Won 150 matches here, which is still, I think, is still a record. And he was their head coach for 33 years. So there's nobody on this campus that deserves a statue more of him. The only debate is, do you make it up as a wrestler or as a coach? I say you make it a collage and do both. Since you asked, so I'm glad you asked. I was thinking about that last night. Who else deserves one other than him? I mean, we've had a lot of people do amazing things here, but he was the best in the world at what he did, period.
He's a little bit, just a little bit older than you, I think. 1 year, 2 years. What'd you think about him going up in Middale?
So John and I traveled in summers and did freestyle wrestling. We made some trips around the country to Kansas. We wrestled up in Boulder. I would have been about 10 or 12, John probably 14, somewhere in that area. Everywhere we knew, people knew who John Smith was. And there was about 3 or 4 of us that traveled together in the summers wrestling, and the rest of us were fighting for our life, and they all knew who John was. But John was always a fierce competitor and about as loyal a cowboy as you could get, and a commitment of, I think John was a senior in about 83, something like that. So from that time on, he was committed to Oklahoma State University, which is a long, long time.
He coached for 33 years. I think you'd have to coach another 12 or so to get to that.
I can make that.
Is that, I mean...
I'd say that there's a lot of wear on tear on all head coaches. I would say 33 for a wrestling coach would be like 22 for a football coach. And here's why. Neither John or I are very good at math, but I have 140 and John has about 25, 30, something like that.
He gets in there and wrestles with him.
Well, I know, and that's what I'm saying. John's different. John wrestled at times, I think, with a torn ACL. So anyway, I have a pretty high standard for John Smith as a person, a coach, and a competitor.
Do you remember, like your dad, he said when y'all would travel, you'd walk into a gym, and a lot of the kids John's age and size, their parents, they'd walk out. They'd see John show up for the tournament, they'd just roll it.
Well, that's what I was referring to. They knew who John Smith was. When John came in, they didn't know if they want to pay the entry fee, and that's just the way it was with him in this part of the country. And that was prior to social media and internet. But he had a reputation that preceded him when we showed up in tournaments.
Mike, before the spring began, obviously you had all these old guys coming back, veterans coming back. We kind of asked what we thought that would look like. How has that played out, good and bad?
These guys, they're doing very well. We had a very competitive physical spring, and we've pushed them. In fact, last Saturday, I stopped practice in the last 20 minutes, and they worked so hard I just called it off. And they're the ones that are taking the reins on this. And as I said a couple weeks ago, I spoke very directly to those guys and said, you have to be willing to train and practice harder than you did last year, even though you're Ollie Gordon or Joe Mikulski or Brennan Presley or Colin Oliver or Corey Black or Cole Birmingham. You have to put forth that effort, and they have done that up to this point.
How has Stribling been doing, a few weeks into practice, having the injury, kind of getting back in the swing of things?
We've had to back him off a little bit because he's practicing like he doesn't have an injury, which is a good sign. Our defense is doing a good job of protecting him. For the most part, we could turn him loose. It's just not really necessary, but he's doing very well. Same thing with Talon. Both of them are practicing like they don't have an injury.
What's the expectation for him this season? Obviously, when he went down, you had Rashad, and you had other guys kind of step in to those starting roles. What's Deshaun's
Scribbling?
Yeah.
So he's got enough ability to play beyond this level if he continues to work, practice, and take care of his body and all the things that are important to get to the next level. He's willing to put the work in. We'll get him ready. We'll train him. We'll put him in that position. But he does have enough of that ability to go to the next level.
Stribling's a good example on offense. Nick maybe on defense, guys that are wearing green and aren't going full out all the time. Can you watch what's going on and kind of vision your offense, your defense with the parts that are sitting out, so to speak?
Yes. I mean, we have a good idea of what we want to get accomplished. There's not really a lot of changes. Offensively, we have so many returning players that there's not many adjustments. There's a few things that I wasn't happy with last year that I feel like we need to implement to put into the system for this year. And then defensively, we're going to play 3 now and we're going to play 4 now. We want to be multiple. It's just a matter of how much we do of one or the other based on what we can get accomplished. But we do have enough returning players that it gives us a little bit of a head start. And then in the kicking game, we'll be very similar because the majority of those returning starters that we talk about, most of the time it doesn't get brought up, but those are all special teams players.
You lost Josiah, but do you think with the tight ends you brought in that you've advanced your tight end position to where it can make you more versatile on offense?
Yeah, those guys need to be able to play like he did. Josiah was special because he had a disregard for his body, and he played a position that with what we do with the tight ends, there has to be somewhat of a disregard for pain and for your body to play effectively, and that's what he did. He was a special player here for that reason, because talent-wise, he's got talent, but it's not like the New England Patriots are knocking his door down. But he just chose to rise and bring it to another level, and that's what he did. And I feel good with these guys, but they're not to that point yet. I mean, he finished the season as a really, really good football player for us. These guys have the potential to get there, but they're certainly not to that point at this time.
Are you expecting one guy to replace him, or maybe more of a committee to fill in?
Well,
what he did?
we brought the young man from Ohio down here. He's got experience, and then we have the young players. Quentin's been around now for a while. 38's been here forever. 40 is Ford. He's here. So those guys are going to make some strides, but they're not going to play like Josiah did at the end of the year. So I guess we need a little bit of a committee to get those guys going, and that'll help us out.
Different times you've thrown the ball more, thrown the ball less to the tight end. Is that about the tight end ability to catch, or is that other factors that play in more when you throw it to him or don't throw it to him?
So we got away from tight ends when Dana came in here by design, and then we integrated some run game into that system that we had, and then we stayed away from tight ends for a while because of the speed of the offense, and tight ends aren't going to move as fast as a skill player. And then we circled back a few years ago with Jarwin and Veach, and then we got away from it. So this is a long answer for we've circled back to it, and we will use tight ends both in the running game and the throwing game.
So it sounds like it's a little bit of both. Sometimes it's system, and sometimes it's do you have the guys to throw it to them?
And when they block good, that allows them to get more passes because the other team's trying to play more run, and they're the ones that are the hidden receivers.
With your offensive line all coming back, how versatile are they, and can they play different positions if they need to?
We have 4 guys that can play 2 positions, and then we have 3 guys that can play center and guard. So we're in a pretty good spot right now. We've got a couple guys that aren't practicing the spring because they had repairs. We push through the spring and keep these guys healthy. With the guys coming back, we could very well be in the best position that we've been in the offensive line since the years with Zach Robinson and all those guys. You were too young to know who that is, but that's like 15 years ago, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I was just dreaming about that the other day. What's the center?
Wait,
The
dreaming about
left-handed
the
center.
Zach Robinson here.
It's in the picture on the cover of Sports Illustrated.
Oh yeah, with Zach.
What's the blonde-headed kid?
Before
Andrew something.
Mitchell. No.
Andrew, no, not Mitchell.
No.
Mitchell was from
Lewis?
Choctaw.
Lewis.
No.
Andrew
No.
Lewis.
Andrew was from Missouri.
Yeah.
He's from right across the
Andrew
border.
Lewis.
Andrew Lewis,
Yeah.
That group.
Yeah.
I think we can be like that group. That was named that tune.
We got it eventually.
Hey,
Snap
you
with
know
both
that
hands.
show, Whose Line Is It Anyway? That's back on.
Is it?
Yeah, I
A
saw.
lot of them have recycled.
Oh, I'm
Password's
flipping
back.
through the channels last night.
Yeah.
There was no girls basketball to watch, and there wasn't any good championship wrestling on, so I just went to Whose Line Is It Anyway?
How do you think you would do in those situations? How do you think you would do in an improv situation like that?
And what's that?
Like whose line is it? Like, how do you think you would do
I do pretty good because I'm a good BSer. Like I do it all the time. But I would do pretty good at that.
Have you ever done like an improv night or go to something like that?
I have not.
Your defensive line. Is that a group you feel like you've got some depth at? I'm talking
We
about
do.
offensive line depth, but defense, you think
We
you
do.
can rotate through some guys there?
We've got 5.5 nose guards and 3 techniques, which are your inside guys. And we have about 6 outside guys now that I think can play in the first 3 games and play pretty comfortably. We have young guys behind them, but are we comfortable with them yet? No. So we've got 5.5 or so and then 6 on the edge. So we're in pretty good shape. And we have 18 players back, so that's why every position looks decent right now.
How would you compare those numbers to other years? Would you say it's typical, a little more than normal?
Sometimes we didn't even have 4 for the 2 positions. We only had 3 for the 2 spots. And there's been times we didn't have 4 ends to play those 2 spots. So we're pretty fortunate this time.
But in the last couple of years, you've had at least 8 guys on the defensive line you felt good with.
Yeah, some of the 2 or 3 of those guys on years were redshirt freshmen. Now most of these guys are mature. You still have Jaleel and 87, but we've got some older guys.
Is in terms of kind of taking the next step in the evolution up there, is improving the pass rush maybe the most important thing?
Yeah, we didn't get enough pass rush last year. Part of it is your 3-down scheme. So when you're in a 3-down scheme, your pass rush is going to be limited. That's why we're putting a little bit more 4 down than what we've done in the past. But we can do both. But you're not going to have as good a pass rush with 3 down as 4 down. But we also have to get better. We've got to pressure quarterbacks. Quarterbacks are so much better than they used to be. If you can't move their feet and pressure them a little bit, it makes for a long day.
You said, Mike, some things you didn't like about your offense last year. What were some of those things?
Oh, there was times that we got trapped into running into heavy box. As we know, I mean, as the year went on, everybody started piling the box. Ollie ran through it a lot, but that's not going to last forever. So there's just a couple ways that we can go about making sure that doesn't happen all the time. It's going to happen some, but I don't want it to happen as much as it did last year, the last 6 games of the year.
Are there advantages to not having a spring game?
I mean, I don't, not that I know of.
I just didn't know if there were other things you could work on.
We'll get
or-
another practice.
Yeah.
A spring game is basically an all-pro football game almost, or an NBA all-star game. So unless you're going to play a real game and just say, hey, we're going to go tackle and not worry about injuries, it's not really a football game. And it's hard to watch. It's hard for me to watch because the referees don't know where to mark the ball down. I'm blowing the whistle, chasing the guy with the ball, telling him to bring it back here. The crowd's upset because they want it to be on the 20. He wants it on the 10. The kid says, I wasn't tackled. He wouldn't have got me down. The defensive guy says, you were down. I would have tackled you. So it's not really that great in my opinion, unless you just say go play and make it all tackle. We could do that. I can't get over that hump. I just can't make myself do it.
So how much value do you think y'all will get out of that extra practice this year?
Well, every practice is good for us. I mean, even though we have a veteran team, I mean, we get, I meet with the staff tomorrow morning for about 3 hours and we go over all the tape. And we could go for 6 hours. I mean, we still need a lot of work.
Is the spring game, I don't remember when you guys last had one, if it had become part of your recruiting. Is that an area where you miss maybe not having?
Not as much anymore because we've had 2 big recruiting weekends, and this will be another one this weekend, and we have another one after that. And now they come to practice on Saturday, and they actually enjoy it more than the spring game because they feel the same way I do. When they come watch practice, they can see their coaches working and the players, and they go to a spring game and they see a flag football game. So it actually works better for us the way we've set it up, and we can do a lot more things, and it gives us time. You know, they can come to my house, they can use the pool, all that stuff, and it actually works better now than it did with a spring game.
Is there a chance when you guys have the ability to have a spring game when the construction's over that you might not do it?
Right now I'm leaning towards, you know, what's happened here the last 2 years, almost like what happened in COVID. Like a lot of stuff in COVID, we're like, that's a pretty good idea. I can stay home. I don't ever have to go to the office. I never have to get out of my PJs, you know? Well, so I think we've learned that not having a spring game, other than not engaging the fans, it used to be the fans and the recruits. Now the recruits are fine, it's just the fans. So we might have to implement something for the crowd, the fans, but it's certainly more advantageous for us to have a practice.
Would it be possible to have a practice instead of the spring game, like hold it in the stadium? Or is that just something?
We could, yes, and we did that one year. That is an option. That was back 5-6 years ago. We did it, and the crowd kind of was expecting a game.
Yeah, but you didn't have any offensive linemen that year, if I remember.
Is that why I did it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's probably why. And but that's not a bad idea. You would have a shortened version, because you know the truth of the matter is, families come to it. The husbands are all jacked up. The moms are like, yeah, this is not so great, and the kids are all acting up. So about 1 hour, everybody's maxed out. Truthfully, but that's not a bad idea.
Guys were just kicking field goals over there. You got a competition going there? Is Logan kind of your guy? What are you?
Logan's a guy right now, but Joe keeps statistics, puts them on my desk every other day of where we're at. Logan's floating in the 82 to 87 range right now, which is good. The other guys are about 78 to 82. So right now Logan's the guy, but we're getting some decent kicks.
That's 82% made. The HM.
I hope so.
You're not kicking from made.
But you know what? It's worth asking because you never know.
With your offensive line, a lot of those guys, it's their 6th year. They've been to tons of practices and things like that. How do they continue to get better in year 6? And
those guys, you know, it's interesting. We have to be protective of them, as I've shared with you for 3 weeks, but they still get decent reps at seeing all the different looks and communicating with each other without talking, like knowing what they're doing. And the backer moves over here and stacks, then they know they're going to do this instead of that. Just things that you really never get enough of. When you have a veteran offensive line, you can do so many more things. Integral parts of offense that are real detailed that you can do that young guys spin their head. With these veteran guys, they can work on these things and can make you much better.
What's the biggest question mark you have as you think about heading into next fall?
Well, what I said in the offseason, what I said before we started is these guys have to stay humble and not expect anybody to give them anything. And I would say the biggest challenge for us now is continued work and effort. And then I have to handle the preparation to get us ready in the first game. They just need to stay the course and not expect anybody to give them anything. I think that's the biggest challenge, which, you know, be completely different this time next year. It'll be, you know, Stern and remaking and all the other things of what to do next year.
anything else?